All right, folks, it's David Siteman Garland, aka DSG, and we're going actually to the other side of do we call it the pond, the world? I don't know what we're doing. Katherine Beck joining me today. Hello, Katherine. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I am great, and you are coming at us from where?
Sydney, Australia.
I love it. Power of the internet. And by the way, we were just joking before this conversation that we both have little kids in the house. You have an animal in the house as well. So you never know who's going to appear during this interview, which is what I love when we do this, right? So to preface this for everyone that's watching, just to give a little context, I'd like to just paint a little color here before we get into the questions, is that Katherine is one of my Create Awesome Online Courses students, and she had an amazing post this past April, in fact, where she talked about the success that you've been having during this crazy pandemic, right? Which is going on right now. And by the way, in the future, God knows what's going to happen. I'm sure there's going to be other issues. There's going to be other things going on. But to give us a little context about what you are and what you do, let's talk about this at first. What happened? What has happened here over the last month with you and your business? Before we dissect it and we go backwards, why don't you tell a little bit about what happened over the last month?
I think I was like a lot of people when the whole pandemic started, where I just kind of wanted to bury my head in the sand and do nothing and stay at home. And the last thing I could think about doing was another launch because I felt like nobody's going to want to buy it right now. Everyone's worried about their health and their safety. So I can't myself even get myself to look at my emails or look at my work. I just needed a week or two just to kind of figure out what was going on in the world. And then one day I woke up and I said, you know what? I'm just going to open up my course and offer it to my public and let them know that it's open if they want to work. I'm going to try and pay it back. So I decided to reduce my private session fees as a way to work with people that are suffering, because a lot of
Sure.
the people that I work with are actors who lost their jobs. So I just wanted them to work and feel like I was there to support them during this time. And I think for me, I needed it just as much as they needed it. You know, I needed that contact with other people. And I started to notice that people were buying left, right, and center. And so I said, you know what, maybe I'll do a launch. So I decided to do a series of live webinars. And I did 3 webinars in 2 days.
Wow.
That within hours sold out. So each session sold out real fast. People were keen to jump on and do some free training with me. And when I do a webinar, I do a combination of slides and formal training to the group, but then I always ask for a few volunteers so that I can work with them on screen and people can see how I work and see how I give feedback on their accent. And so I did that and I did a proper launch and I ended up selling 31 courses.
Amazing. And I see this right here. The grand total is 16,500 during a pandemic, during craziness. And what's interesting about this, and we're going to back up the whole story. People are going to be like, wait, what is she talking about with accents? We're going to get into the whole story here, what we're actually talking about. But what I wanted to start with was kind of the end, or the current, because I think this is such an important thing that we've talked about inside of Create Awesome Online Courses. We've talked about this in the Facebook group and things like that, where, you know, there's this concern now, obviously, that people are not buying anything except for the necessary essentials. Do you know what I mean? And it's key to understand that, yes, people are buying online training. Yes, people are buying a variety of things. Do you know what I mean? I was using the random example. I see, I follow a bunch of softball bat pages. People are buying softball bats like you wouldn't believe, right? We can't even use them right now, but they're buying them. And so there's this misconception that, you know, and by the way, yes, there are people absolutely struggling that don't have, the means to be doing so, but you'd be surprised. I guarantee you in every target market, there are people here that are looking to buy and looking for help and looking to learn things right now, right? For now or the future. So to back this up, you know, people that are taking clues of what we talked about so far, if they've been really watching this intently, they heard accent, they heard students, they heard actors, they heard a lot of words there, and they're probably trying to put together, what are you an expert? What do you teach and what are you an expert in?
Okay, so I teach non-US actors, voiceover artists, presenters, but primarily actors, how to perform with an American accent. So it's not just learning the accent, but it's learning how to bring it into performance seamlessly so that you feel confident and free in performance, so that you're not thinking about the accent, you're enjoying the performance. And that's what a lot of actors struggle with.
I love it. I love it on your website, which is katherinebeck.com. We'll link that up later on as well. Is that I love when you go on there, it says, I'm not your ordinary dialect coach. I teach non-US actors from all over the world how to bridge the gap between process and performance. And I love this niche because, as you know, I've got, thousands of students, all different varieties. I love when I find something that I didn't even know existed. It makes me very happy, right? And I'd love to plug going back now in history, right? What's your background before you got sort of into this part of the business? What's your background in terms of how do we get up to the point of being an expert, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, I tell people all the time, I didn't wake up one day and say, hey, I want to be an American accent coach. It just happened because I always desperately wanted to be an actress from a very small age. I grew up in Chicago, and the dream for me was always to move to Hollywood, which I did shortly after college. I moved to Hollywood and I was doing the whole LA thing. And just a random chance meeting with an Australian in a bar on the Sunset Strip changed my world. And we fell in love within 6 days of knowing each other and had to figure out what to do. And we got married pretty quickly and decided to move to Sydney, Australia, which is where he's from. And I decided, you know what, I still want to be an actor. But now I guess I've got to learn the Australian accent so that I can be in this market, because it was before the real explosion with the digital age with self-tapes, auditions and submissions happening. So I had to prove myself in this market halfway around the world. So I needed an Australian accent. And it was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be to really master the accent. And even though I worked with a dialect coach for 3 months, I still was horrible at it. So I had to figure out for myself what was holding me back from really inhabiting the accent so that I could book work. Because I had an agent at the time and she said, no one's going to hire you over an Australian. Why are they going to hire you? Because you're not from here. And there was always this thing about Americans can't do Australian accents. So I am very stubborn. And I said, I'm going to prove everyone wrong. If it kills me, I'm going to learn this accent and I'm going to book work. And so I spent a year really figuring out what was holding me back until I could book work. And I did. I started booking work with an Australian accent. I went on set pretending I was Australian and people didn't know I was American. And I was like, oh my God, I've worked it out. And so I thought, if I understand what was holding me back from what was one of the hardest accents in the world to learn, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to teach Australians, people from other countries, how to do the same. If they've got a passion, a dream to go to Hollywood and pursue work and learn the American accent, I'm going to teach them how to do it. And so that's how it happened.
I love it. And by the way, side note, I'm always so impressed when I'm watching movies or TV or whatever it might be, and then I see the actor, actress on, let's say, a talk show or something like that, and they have an accent that wasn't the one on the movie. My mind is blown. It's amazing the skill set that it takes for this. And, why I love hearing about the backstory is that there's always this shift from kind of doing and, getting your experience to then at some point also teaching others, right? Coaching others, moving into digital products and the things that you've done. And I'm curious about this in a few different ways. Number one, was there kind of a light bulb moment, or what was the appeal for you where at some point you said, you know what, I've got these great skills I've mastered. There's a great need here for this. I think I want to be a personal brand. Let's just call it a coach. I'm going to use my personality, my experience, and turn this into a business. What was sort of that shift for you, or how did that happen?
I guess that I first started by writing a book. Like all
Okay.
the knowledge that I had, I wanted to write a book.
Okay.
And I think around that time, I also came across you and learned about online courses. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting. But I sat on it for about 2 years before I purchased your amazing course that changed my life. And so I guess it sort of shifted for me because I started looking online of how could I expand myself from just working in Sydney to working globally. And that really changed my world, was thinking bigger than what I was thinking before. So not just working with somebody in the room, but how could I work with them digitally all over the world?
Now, at first here, were you thinking online course? Like you said, you obviously came in on the program. Did you start as a coach for this? And everyone's a little bit different. Everyone's got different backgrounds. Some people, they start with one-on-one coaching. Some people don't. Some people just say, hey, listen, I've done this. I'm going to teach others. Some people say, hey, I did it in this setting or that's. Everybody's different how they do it. Did you do one-on-one coaching before you did this, or did you hop right into the kind of online part?
Yeah, so I've been doing one-on-one coaching since 2012. I think that's when I first started dialect coaching. And I also would do master classes, so like group master classes and some class teaching as well, so group classes. But primarily one-on-one coaching, which is what I still do. I still see clients one-on-one.
Absolutely. And now, and was that, I'm assuming when it started 2012 was probably in person, right? Like, and that's what you're saying, like you didn't have necessarily the global reach. Hey, I can be behind the computer teaching people either one-on-one or at scale, right? Either way with a course. And
exactly.
And that's pretty cool. So that also answers one of my questions, because some people, when they get into, some people when they're figuring out topics, expertise, personal branding, things like that, they're thinking to themselves, okay, I've got this great idea for something, and then they're worried that people aren't going to spend money on it, right? Because there's a difference between, and by the way, people spend money on an outrageously large amount of things, trust me. But some people are worried, okay, well, I've got this expertise. I got this thing I think I could teach people, but I don't know if they're going to open the wallets for this. I don't know if this is something that people actually spend money. You proved that during a coaching part of the business, because people were obviously paying you for packages or hourly. Was there ever... Did you just know that because you had a coach and you saw the things that you knew that there was a market for this?
Yeah, I knew that what I had tapped into was different to what was out there and what other dialect coaches teach. And in doing my research, the only things I could find online that were similar were really focusing on the sounds of the accent and the intonation and the rhythm and the stress. But where I suffered, and a lot of actors suffer, is bringing it into performance. And so that was my niche. And that's where I knew that I could present something to people that was needed. The problem that I found was that people in my market are so used to working in person that it's always been really hard to get them to work online, even one-on-one classes online. People would prefer to work in person. So when this whole pandemic started and people had to be at home but still wanted to learn, it totally changed my world.
Yeah.
So now people are receptive.
Yeah. It's funny because as we know, online learning's been going on for a long time, right? But I was always been fascinated by this and proven over and over again with this, just by watching what people do, that really anything, for the most part, that can be taught offline can be taught online. And it's amazing. I mean, really, I have yet to find, someone will probably come up with some example and this or that, but I've seen bull riding. I've seen the craziest stuff you've ever seen. Do you know what I mean? With online. And now I think we're seeing a societal shift. One of the positive things that come out of this very negative, obviously, virus, right, is people understanding, guess what? I could probably do some things like this. If I want to learn a skill or have a mentor or coach, I might not have to do it. Like, yeah, nothing replaces sitting in the same room with someone, but we can still work at scale and work online and do different things like that. And it's not surprising where I think when the world starts to return a little bit, that you're going to see a mix. Some people might say, you know what, I actually prefer this from being from home, or more flexibility, or maybe pre-recorded or whatever it might be. And I think that's something that we're going to continue to see,
Definitely.
So rolling ahead here with the brand, let's start from when we took this more online, from more of the coaching business, and we decided, okay, you're going to do an online course, you're going to start building, kind of now, did you go into that with a following, or did you come in and say, okay, I also have to kind of build my email list and build my following online?
Yeah, I'm very much a creator type. So the whole business side of things was totally new to me. And the whole list building, I had like a very tiny email list. So I had to start building my email list from scratch pretty much. And I remember when I purchased your course back then, I think you recommended somewhere between 500 and 1,000 for your list. And I went a little bit renegade on my first launch because I had purchased it in November of 2017. And I didn't want to go more than a year before launching. So it took me a whole year to get through all the steps to be able to launch. And I thought, I'm just going to launch with whatever sort of list I have. And it was tiny. I think it was only like 250 people, but I just went for it. And the only people that sold were previous one-on-one students of mine. So I only sold 3 courses. So I made about $1,500 on my first launch, which I was a little disappointed, but not because I knew I had a small list and I was still learning how this whole process works. But I was ecstatic because I made a launch, I did what I wanted, and I actually sold some products. So I was really excited.
I love it because, I get it, because I think what we've been sort of, I'm going to go on a rant here, but I'm going to try to keep it to 10 seconds, is that, we've been polluted by this whole thing with people like multi-zillion dollar launches in 5 seconds and things like this. And people don't understand, like, listen, if you want to have a long-term business, that first launch might be 1,000, it might be 1,500, it might be 3,000, 5,000, it might be 0, and you need to adjust and move from there, right? But it's the people that stick with it. And it's interesting, I'm not surprised that it came from some previous clients when you started as well. So a few questions here if we dissect into this. The previous clients, let's call these the alphas, the OGs that have worked with you, right? Where did you find them over time? Like, what was your marketing method, or how did clients find you back in the day before we got into the list building and all this kind of stuff? Where did people find you?
Well, it was really fascinating about my first, the first people that purchased is because 2 of them were voiceover artists, not even your traditional actor. They were voiceover artists. So I thought that was really surprising. And they had both worked on me one-on-one, and we're all represented by the same voiceover agency. So we know each other pretty well. And then the third person is an actress who we did a few different one-on-one sessions together, and she moved to Vancouver. And we hadn't worked together for a while. And she was looking for a resource that she couldn't find in Vancouver, which I've come to now understand is, other countries like Vancouver are really looking for things like that. So it was pretty cool because it wasn't even anyone in Sydney, anyone local. Well, actually, sorry, no, 2 were local, but they weren't actors.
Nice.
So it wasn't even what I thought my first customers were going to be. Nice.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, before we dive into the whole course thing and getting into all that, I'm curious also, your kind of original when you were working with people one-on-one, when you put your kind of flag down in Sydney saying, hey, listen, I'm teaching people how to speak with the American accent, things like that as well. Before you got into sort of internet marketing, let's just call it, and learning that process, which we'll talk about here in a second, how did clients first find out about you? They were talking even pre-online course days when you were just a coach. How did coaching clients find you, or how did you find clients for your original coaching business?
I just had a really simple website, and a lot of it was just word of mouth. That was it.
So like you'd be at a audition or something like that, and passing cards out, or what were you doing? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, people would ask what I do, and people would start to hear what I did, and then, their agents would start to spread the word. And if somebody would come see me and had a really good response from our work together, they would then share that with their actor friends. It's such a small community, actors, and they talk. So if you're good at something, the word gets out, and then eventually people get to know who you are. And so it always kind of surprises me now when people go, oh, Katherine Beck. Yeah, I know who she is. Yeah, I've heard about her. And I think, oh, wow, like your name starts to become a brand without you even doing anything really.
Right, and it's amazing because right now I could say, "Oh, who's Katherine Beck?" and you could say it in a sentence. You know what I mean? You could say, "Hey, I teach people. What we talked about that American accent, British gap, blah blah blah." And I think that's something with a lot of people struggle with is that they're sometimes scared to put that flag in the ground about what they want to be known for. And I think it's something that's critical. You know. And now shifting, talking about courses and your courses, starting at the beginning of that process. You know, you mentioned how it's cool how people can take your course now anywhere in the world, anytime they want, all those kinds of things. But you're a coach, you're rocking your coaching business, you got things going on, we got the Australian husband, we got the kids, we got the dog, we got lots of stuff. What was the appeal for you, or appeals? Why an online course? Of all the things you could do kind of next or focus on, why for you was doing an online course important?
I always wanted to be there for my kids. So I always wanted to work. I think it's important for me to have that creative outlet and to do something for myself. But I wanted to do it in a framework where I could be there for my kids. I could take them to school. I could pick them up from school. I could go to their gymnastics competitions. I can go to their concerts, assemblies. I wanted to be that type of mom that was accessible to be present for my kids and whatever their needs were. So for me, online courses seemed like the perfect thing for me because I could make my own schedule and I could work my own hours and then still be there for my kids whenever they need me.
I love it. I love it. You got to have that strong why. We always say that, you know, you see me post about this in the Create Awesome Online Courses Facebook group where, you know, your whys have to kind of, they have to outnumber the why nots. Do you know what I mean? Because there's plenty of reasons not to do stuff. and a lot of times we just have to have that strong reason, you know, why, which is very important. And by the way, going into it, were you nervous about anything? Were you worried about, was there any doubts in your mind, or was there any kind of things that you were thinking as you began that process?
Yeah, I guess I found it extremely overwhelming. And so a lot of it was just not giving into the overwhelm and, just taking it step by step, moment by moment, and not worrying about, all the things I had to do, but just worrying about or focusing on just what the task was at hand so that I didn't freak out and then not complete it because it is a lot of work
Absolutely.
to create an online course, but it's also a lot of work to create an online course that is special, that's going to get results for your students. And I really wanted it to feel like they were in the room with me, like we were doing one-on-one sessions together in the room or online. I wanted them to feel like I was there for them and I answered every single possible question that they might have. And so it took a lot of work, a lot of hours, a lot of sleepless nights. My husband would see me just working away at the computer, thinking I was crazy because I wanted to do every single aspect of building the course, from the graphics to the PDFs, to the editing of the videos, to building the website. I wanted to do everything. And that took a lot of time to do it on your own.
So you are the classic do-it-yourselfer, right? When it comes to that, that's funny because it's interesting, and a lot of us start that way, and they then over time can outsource. Some people are big outsourcers early on. It depends on your situation. Some people aren't. Everybody's different. I've seen so many different things, but it's amazing. Now, probably my guess would be if certain things, I'm sure you wouldn't mind outsourcing in the future, or you're going to keep control of everything. You're going to keep control of everything. Can't do it all.
I think you can't do it at all. I think I've finally reached the point where I do need a VA. I need somebody to help me with some of the smaller things, because you do get to the point where you start to build this list of students that you need a little bit of support. So that's 100%. Definitely where I'm at now.
You're in the right mindset for that, for sure. Now, I want to break down a couple things here. We're going to talk about the course. We're going to talk about kind of the audience, because I think those are two very important things. The the people that you attract, and then of course the course and all that kind of stuff. So starting with let's talk email list, let's talk audience a little bit here, right? So I'm curious, first of all, how did you go about building your email list? You mentioned that it took a while to get to that 250. Obviously, you've got a very specific niche here. I mean, this is a very specific niche, right? No one's going to accidentally kind of say, oh, I need to learn an American accent. Like it's very specific, and that's a good thing. But it's also not something where, mass marketing or anything like that is going to be the key to success. So where did you find folks for your email list? How'd you get them on your email list?
Well, I don't know if you remember. So back in 2017, when I got your course, there was like an extra bonus, which was feedback from DSG. And one of the things that you said in the feedback was something about live events. Like you thought that would be really great, and to give them a form to fill out. So I think it was about a year ago, I got approached by Actors Equity, which is the union over here. It's kind of like the Screen Actors Guild, that they wanted me to come teach workshops with them. And so I ended up doing that with them. And last year I was doing probably one a month with them. And so every time I would do a workshop, I would bring a little list with me, a little form, and they could check off, give me their email address, check off if they want, information on online programs or one-on-one sessions, whatever. And so that was a really great way for me to build my list, as well as just reaching out to Facebook groups that had actors. So like, for example, when I just did those 3 webinars, I just shared my post with different Facebook groups, and it, like within hours, I was sold out of all 3.
And that makes a lot of sense. And it's funny that, in every industry is a little bit different, but that one, there's probably not a lot, you're unique in what you do and what you bring to the table. So when you have something to share, people are going to pay attention to it if they're obviously interested. And I love that idea of, like, with Facebook groups, obviously adhering to the rules of them. But yeah, if I was in a group and it was my target market and it made sense, and you're like, hey guys, as long as it's with the group rules, which I'm sure it was, you say, hey, listen, I've got this great training. If anybody wants to come join on there, and then boom, you can convert them on a webinar. Has webinar been your biggest conversion mechanism?
I think so, because I do it a little bit differently, and it makes sense to my audience. Is I like to have volunteers, and I like to work with them so people can see how I work and understand how my process is different to other people's process. And I use specific exercises that I think kind of have a wow factor, where people can see immediate results and changes in their accent. So for me, I think it's been really good, because people get to know who I am. They get to know my personality, and whether or not they want to work with me then in the online course or one-on-one sessions. So yeah, I'd probably say webinars have been really good for me.
Nice. And I like it. So to break it down, just for people that know, for those watching at home, is that you've got, if you want to break it down here, is what you did is you did an in-person list building, as we call that, right? Which is a great way of doing it, meaning like you were invited to speak, or you can out there and hustle yourself to speak, and you say, listen, I'm going to convert this into continue the relationship after I'm off stage, which a lot of people forget to do, right? Number 2 is that you were able to leverage Facebook groups, other Facebook groups, to bring people in your audience. Those are 2 great things that you did right there. Then the third thing in terms of one of the mechanisms to sell, of course, is webinars. Now, a couple questions on here on details. When people join your email list, I know you've got giveaways on your site, katherinebeck.com, different things like that. Did you then something that's important is staying in touch and staying in front of people one way or another, right? Because people will join your email list, and something that we know is a CAOC no-no is that someone joins your email list and they never, ever, 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 ever hear from you until you have something to sell, right? Which is what happens sometimes. People they forget the strategy, and then they don't continue to build that relationship one way or another. So when people join your email list, do they get regular content from you? What kind of things do they get if someone joins or has just been on your email list?
Yeah, I set up some weekly tips that would go out once a week.
Perfect.
So people, yeah, and people seem to really like those as well. I'll get emails from people on my list and they'll go, "Wow, I really love that. Thank you for sharing that. That was really inspirational." So I try and, add every now and then a few extra weekly tips to that list so that when people are on there, they get those kind of dripped in as they are on the list. And yeah, so that's the primary way of kind of keeping in touch. And then next phase is I'm looking to do a podcast pretty
Cool.
soon. So
Cool. And
yeah,
I like it
yeah,
where, it's keeping it simple. And that's what I think you've done a really good job of, is that you're not, you're not trying to do 50 things at once. I think people we're always doing 50 things at once because we're entrepreneurs. But what I mean by that is you're not like, oh God, by the way, I'm going to do a YouTube channel next month, a podcast. We're also going to be going hard on Instagram. I've got tips going out and I'm going to be doing my own big Facebook group. That's a recipe for disaster, right? I like that you've kind
yeah.
of said, okay, well now maybe it's a time for the podcast, right? But you already have other simple things in place. And so I love that strategy of just not trying to do too much. You know what I mean? And I think that's very, very important.
Yeah, I mean, like I have done a handful of YouTube
Mm-hmm.
videos. I've done some IGTV videos, but it's like you said, and it's so true. You can't do too many things at once. You can tap into these different areas, but if you're trying to do all of that at once, it's nearly impossible.
Yeah, it's so true. And by the way, you posted something, and I want to make sure I'm 99. If it's not you who posted this, because I'm 99.9, because I went back and looked, so I know it is. But in case I'm mistaken here, tell me. But I thought one of the coolest things that you did that you've mentioned. This is so important for people like yourself that have both clients and an online course, right? If you have both, one-on-one clients or group clients, and you have a course, right? I like how you mentioned this, that your course, you have to explain to people that the course is actually kind of like a better deal for folks, right? To get as opposed to one-on-one clients, because, one-on-one clients, that's the big kit and caboodle, but it's not scalable, obviously, for you or for them. So how do you, if someone comes to you and says, well, I don't know, one-on-one course, like I'd prefer to work with you only, and I only want to work with you at midnight or whatever weird stuff
Yeah.
you want to do. How do you kind of change that dialogue to say, hey, listen, the online course is actually a better move for a lot of people?
Yeah, this is where I was really frustrated for the first year of the course is because I know it was really great, but I couldn't sell it. Like I didn't know what to say, how to say it. I was kind of lost with all of that. And then I realized I have to explain to people why they need it and why it is so different and unique. And so I realized that, look, for my actors, one on one sessions are great for immediate feedback. But often, what happens in a one on one session is you forget a lot of the information afterwards, or you don't have the resources, the tools to continue to practice. And with the American accent, if you're from another country, you need to continue to practice. It's a skill that you got to keep working on. It's an ongoing practice. So I give them the tools so that they can continue to practice. For any audition that comes down the road, they can refer to all the tools that are in the course.
Mm-hmm. So meaning, yeah, and I love that because this is such an important thing, and anyone that creates an online course or has an online course can think about this. It's like, listen, like, yeah, that's great. I can help you one-on-one for this exorbitant price, right? But you can watch this again. You'll have the tools. There'll be, potentially a community aspect. There's support. There's all these different things that go beyond just me helping you one-on-one, and I think that is something important for people to understand, that they can go back and watch the videos in the middle of the night. They can go back and do it this and that. And I do that too. When I take a program or watching videos, a lot of times I watch them like 10 times before I really understand them. I go back and I really want to understand something versus trying to remember what someone told me 2 weeks ago, even if I took notes, right? So I get exactly what you're saying with that. It makes a perfect amount of sense. Now your course, and obviously this is all subject to change, and I'm curious about this. This is a big question. Everybody always wants to know the answer to this, and I'm just going to do it. Currently, what's the price of your course?
It's $497.
Okay, so let's break down a couple of things here. If I want to work with you one-on-one, how much does that cost, give or take?
$125 an hour.
Okay, so $125 an hour. Or I can get your course, which, by the way, already is an incredible value if you look at that. You're like, okay, 125, that's what? Like 4 Katherine hours? Or I can get unlimited information,
Yeah.
right? Which is another great way of positioning it. So you said $495 on the course? Is that what you said?
$497.
$497. Smart with the sevens. How did you, everybody's different with this, how did you develop your price?
I really struggled with the price.
Yeah, people do.
Big time. And I really, when I went through your course, I was going to, and I really wanted to start at $997. But I didn't have faith that my audience would pay $997 right off the bat. So I thought, instead of doing that, you said that, $497 is still considered in that realm of worthy enough where people will see the value and you'll get the right customers. Because I didn't want to devalue it. I didn't want to cheapen it and get the wrong type of customers. I really wanted actors that wanted to work. So I thought, I'll start at $497. And then once I start to see some success with it, then I'll gradually work my way up in price.
Nice. And do you still see that happening, or are you comfortable with that $497?
Yeah, no, definitely. I definitely want to see the price go up. It's a matter of how and when. I was considering for my next launch, because with what I do, it is one of those things where people do want feedback. One of the selling points that I think changed it for me with the course is I added a bonus where I give feedback assignments. So as they go through each module, they submit a sample of themselves with their accent, so I can give them feedback on their accent and give them corrections. And that's been a real big changer for me. So they still get that support from me, but I can do it on my own time.
Love it.
Yeah, so that's been really great. And that, I think, helped elevate the sales. So for my next launch, I'm considering keeping that, as well as a $997 program where they have 10 weeks of online classes with me. So once a week, they can meet up with me and we'll focus on one module, whether it's the sounds or the intonation, rhythm, and stress, or bringing it into performance, where they can get a little bit more coaching with me. So that'll be the $997 offer.
Yeah, kind of a hybrid there of a little coaching program meets a course, and I think what's cool about this is, and this is the case for everybody too, it's like once you start to get some success, right? Like that's the first thing you want, right, is to really focus on getting some success. And what we mean by that is getting students in, getting results, all those things that we talk about, right, which you're way past that. But I'm saying that that's the first thing people want to do. From then, it kind of becomes a little strategic experiments, if that makes sense. Meaning like, hey, let's try this. Some of them are going to work really well. Some of them are going to be horrible, miserable failures. Like I can make you a list of 50 that I've done, okay? But I'm saying that's the key though. Once you have it, is saying, okay, I've dialed in on something successful. Now we can expand it, try different things. Let's see if it works. Let's see how it goes. And that's what's kind of nice about this digital world that we live in. You can try these things with not a ton of risk. Like meaning like the worst case, people don't buy and we move on to something else. It's not like you just, bet the farm and the mortgage on it, and if it goes down, you're screwed. Do you know what I mean? Like you're able to kind of inexpensively test and try different things and see what works. And I kind of like that, for you and for everyone once they get to this level.
Yeah, no, it's really exciting. And I think having that last launch has boosted my confidence. So now I can just go for things and try it, like you said. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, that's all right. Because I've proven that, at the $497 with what I'm offering, that people are attracted to that. So I feel good about it going into the next launch.
Right, because it's now your hypothesis can be like proven, disproven, or whatever. So I mean, you say, okay, I want to see if I can push it to $997. It'll be either yes or no, and then you can kind of go from there, which is great to know. But you already have that baseline of success at $497 and with your hourly. So that's great stuff. So just a few more questions before we wrap up here. One is, and this always fascinates me, or maybe the answer is nothing, but once you put your flag in the ground as an expert in this, and once you put a flag in the ground as a course creator, you launched a course, you've had success with the course, has there been any unexpected things or surprises that have happened since you've kind of put your flag on the ground as this expert and launched your course?
I that's a tough question.
Could
I
be,
don't know.
let's see, I'll give examples. Could be opportunities that came out of nowhere. It could be surprising student stuff. It could be nothing. Could be nothing. Could be nothing.
I guess it's not really surprising, but it really warms my heart how many people that once they enroll in the class, they say how much they love it
Mm-hmm.
and how surprised they are at the content and that it's so easy to follow. So I think I knew that I was putting out something special and I had put my heart and soul. I spent a whole year working on it. So I knew it was something good. But then to get the feedback from people once they enroll saying how much they love it, or like, for example, one of my first students who's in Vancouver, she had booked 3 different things in the American accent within 6 months. That I think that's what is the best is when you start to hear about results or how you're teaching them something in a way that no one else ever has is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think there's nothing more. I mean, we all love the ding of the sales. We all love the ability to, work from home on our own schedules, the ability things to do like that. That's all amazing stuff. But I gotta tell you, there's really nothing that replaces when you get to hear that someone, you help someone. Like they help, you created the tools and the strategies for someone to get that intended result. There is like nothing more powerful in the world. You know what I mean? I'm talking to someone right now with it, so it makes me feel good as well. So I love hearing that's something that you found important for sure. Now, question for aspiring course creators or people that are, up and coming and thinking about maybe doing their first course or, perfecting or whatever. If you were to go back, was there any kind of key mistake or learning experience or something that you would say, okay, I'm making a note of that. I'm not going to do that again, or I would do this differently?
I definitely think so. One of the things, if I go back to that feedback that you gave me, actually, there's 2 things I have to mention. One thing was the list building. You said, even in that feedback email, that I should be focusing on. And it's not that I didn't take your advice, it's that I was so laser focused on creating the course
Mm-hmm.
that I forgot about the list building until the very end. So I wish that I had done that first or started that process before working on the course, because I think for me that was a major pitfall.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, and I understand people kind of have that chicken egg chicken, and it ends up being like, okay, chicken and egg. Do you know what I mean? It's like doing both, and so yeah, that makes perfect sense. I appreciate you sharing that. Final thing here, and then we'll give some links, and we'll wrap this party up. Is that you mentioned a couple things that you're doing next, but I'd be just curious. What's kind of the next focus? What do you see you working on next? Obviously, you've kind of hinted at a lot of them throughout this conversation. So we talked about you've got the coaching, kind of that launch test with kind of the coaching feedback aspect at 997. You're looking at doing a podcast. Anything else? Like where do you see your focus here over the next period of time?
Well, I had started, I think it was in September of last year, I started a monthly membership group as well. And so I consider that sort of phase 2 of the learning. So, the course is people learning the American accent, how to bring it into performance. And then phase 2 is a monthly membership group where they put into practice. So they work on challenging American genres, American archetype characters in scenes that I give them each month is a different scene, a different theme. So like, for example, this month we're working on monologues because everyone's at home and they can't really have readers. Next month, we're going to work on American sitcoms. So I teach them the formula. I teach them about the genre. I give them a scene, and then they submit it to me for feedback like they would a self-tape audition. So it's like that next phase of learning for them, which is pretty cool. So that I've been working on and really developing and just moved onto its own website. So that's kind of where my focus is right now. And that's really exciting. And one more thing before I forget, and I actually brought up the email that you sent me, because this was one of the things, like when I really struggled with trying to figure out, okay, how do I go from just selling a few courses to like really making this successful? I had gone back to that feedback email that you had sent me to figure out, okay, where am I lacking? Like, what do I need to focus on? And it gave me some inspiration, because you had said that it was very niche, and you said it sounds like you're a pioneer, similar to two other CAO students, Renee Christine and Rachel Bowman. And then you sent the links. And I remember back then when I looked at it, I was like, oh my God, like these are amazing women who have done really well. And it really propelled me to say to myself, I want to go there as well. And I went back and I looked at what Renee Christine did and her timeline, and I thought, you know what? I can do that too.
Why not?
I can definitely do that. Why not? And I thought about it. I'm like, what I've done in the last year and a half is pretty cool. And so if I just keep doing that and keep working at it, that's where I want to see myself go. So that's kind of where I'm projected.
I love it. And that's, that's the key, is understanding going long term here. Do you know what I mean? This isn't like thinking in that long term, and that your biggest friend is time. Like as more time passes and more things happen, you keep it going. And what you've done an amazing job here is that you're a tireless worker. You've got a great topic. You're obviously passionate about it. You're passionate about your student results. It's the ultimate package for this, and that's why I'm not surprised by any of this. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not surprised when you come back and you talk about the next crazy things that have been successful. And also, I love that you kind of have that 1-2 punch going, which I love, which is an online course, which is perfect for teaching people how to do something. And then you have ongoing learning for continued, up to the minute specific topics. And I love that as a 1-2 punch. So Katherine, you get the round of applause. You've been kicking butt, taking names. I love it. Thank you so much for coming on here and being so open and candid. And I know when we shot this conversation, we're on different sides of the world, even though we're both drinking unhealthy energy drinks. I appreciate you getting up in the morning early to do this as well. So thank you so much. On the way out, where can we send people if people want to just check out what you're doing? You never know. We might even have some actors on here that are saying, hey, this might be for me, but just anyone in general, where is your hub that people can go check out?
Definitely. So my main website is my name. It's katherinebeck.com. And if you want to check out my online course, it's called AmericanAccentFreeway.com, or my monthly workout group is UltimateScreenActor.com.
I love it. And that is Katherine with a K. Very important fun fact for everyone. So thank you, Katherine, so much. It's been great having you on here, and I appreciate you again sharing your story.
Thanks so much.